How much truck parking is available at public rest areas, and how can it be expanded?
You're watching CCJ's 1044, a weekly webisode that brings you the latest trucking industry news and updates from the editors of CCJ. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you'll never miss an installment of 1044. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Jason Cannon and my co-host is Matt Cole. Truck parking consistently ranks among the top concerns among truck drivers in the American Transportation Research Institute's annual surveys. This past year, it also cracked the top 10 for carriers as well.
New research from ATRI, in partnership with the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, examines truck parking at public rest areas and addresses the challenges states face in adding more, while also offering some strategies states could use to add parking.
So ATRI has been studying, as you know, for many years, the issue of truck parking. We've had truck parking diaries that went out with truck drivers, been working very, very closely with the state DOTs on numerous truck parking studies. In fact, I think our last count is we participated in 37 different states' truck parking studies. A lot of it uses our truck GPS data. We're motivated by the industry, and in our top industry issues report, truck parking was the number one issue for truck drivers for the last 5 years. It finally, just a couple of years ago, hit the motor carriers list of critical issues. Obviously, they're not out day to day struggling to find truck parking, so it sort of took a long learning curve for them to discover it was one of many nails in the coffin when they're trying to either recruit truck drivers or retain truck drivers. So this particular study came out of a research advisory committee. They're well aware that the vast majority of truck parking spaces exist at private truck stops, in fact, about 80% of them. But we also knew from previous research at ATRI that public truck parking spaces played a very important role. In fact, for women truck drivers, they're substantially more important for women than they are for male truck drivers. The security, the safety, the lighting, the proximity to bathrooms is just much better for women truck drivers at public rest stops. So the RAC, as we call it, the Research Advisory Committee, said we need to dig deeper into public rest area parking for truck drivers, where we're at now, where we're going, what we need to do to sort of increase truck parking at public rest areas.
Part of ATRI's research was to find out how much public truck parking was available compared to privately owned truck parking to determine which states are above average and which states have opportunities to expand.
So it did corroborate, as we expected, that about 20% of the truck parking at a state level on average was public and the rest was private. And so what we did is one of the many analyses is we created kind of a ratio index that says, well, okay, if on average, the average state has one public truck parking space for every 4 private spaces, let's look at where the states are at. And so we have a list A through Z, highest to lowest, of the states who are at that average of 1-to-4 ratio, and then states that have more and states that have fewer. We describe the states that are at or better than a 1-to-4 ratio as, meeting expectations. But then we also analyzed the states who have an opportunity to improve the ratio by adding more public rest areas. So we danced a little bit so that we didn't say this is the best to worst. But from a ratio standpoint, we did let the states know when they had opportunities to increase public rest areas to meet that 1-to-4 ratio.
ATRI also developed a truck parking index that lists the 47 responding states and provides information about the number of parking spaces, amenities offered, and more.
Separately, we originally created an index that ranked states using a series of metrics, but ultimately, rather than creating a best to worst index, we changed it to just list the metrics that are most important to truck parking. And these metrics are things like, the budgets, basically the service and maintenance budgets, the number of amenities out of the core 8, how many do the states have? Obviously, the closer you to get to all 8 amenities, the better you were. We looked at safety features, lighting, fencing, patrols, and then TPIMs, which is a painful term for truck parking information systems. So we looked at all of that, including other metrics, number of spaces at rest areas, truck parking per 1 million truck vehicle miles traveled, truck parking per 100 miles of roadway. There's different state sizes, Texas versus Rhode Island sort of thing. So a lot of those metrics were developed as on a sort of per capita basis, so that you still could do some comparison between small states and large states. And so all those metrics are provided in the report. We don't have a best to worst list in there, but certainly anybody can go through the metrics and sort of see, at least the individual states can see where they fit in any of those metrics against their peers, whether that's right in the region or across the whole country.
States identified a number of challenges that they face when it comes to expanding truck parking, and ATRI offered some alternatives where space could be found.
So we lumped land acquisition and right-of-way together, and we're somewhat disappointed to discover that just in the last 10 years, how many states have actively acquired land or right-of-way. And the answer is only about a quarter of them have in the last 10 years. So the 3/4 that have not intended to build entirely new truck parking locations, they're focused more on how to leverage existing facilities or even maybe new and innovative locations for truck parking. And the reasons they haven't, 3 out of 4 states have not acquired new land, is funding. It's extremely costly just to acquire land, particularly in locations where it's needed, let alone, build and maintain. And then more than a quarter of the states, basically renounced new land acquisition because of community pushback. We all know NIMBYs are, a noisy bunch. They want everything that a truck provides in terms of commodities, just-in-time deliveries for internet, purchases, but they just don't want the trucks and they don't want the truck parking. And then, at least a quarter of the states said, we can't find land in locations where it's most needed. So again, they're focused more on utilizing existing locations. And so more than a fourth of the states said, hey, we're looking at way stations and figuring out how we can make a truck driver comfortable parking overnight at a way station when the drivers believe that the likelihood of inspections and enforcement increases. So we have a little bit of a give and take on that one. Parking lot rides, 14% of the states said they were either using or investigating that. And that is intriguing because cars use them during the day, but they're empty at night. So a park and ride lot at night might be a good opportunity, at least if they're built to the specs of an 80,000-pound truck. And then closed welcome centers and other closed state facilities, only 3% of the states were investigating that or using that. But I really think that's a missed opportunity. If you've got an entire access facility off the national highway system or the interstate, and it's not being used for anything, it wouldn't be that hard to convert it to truck parking.
While truck parking information systems are becoming more common along interstates, many truck drivers reported not using them.
So more than half of truck drivers have encountered a TPIM system, a truck parking information system. But unfortunately, barely a third, 34%, have ever used one. And it's because a plurality, a large percentage, have doubts about its reliability. And so when we ask this question, are they, always available, as in, is truck parking always available when it says it is? Basically, between disagree and strongly disagree, you had a third of the drivers saying, no, it's not, they're not accurate. There isn't parking available when it says there is. And let's face it, truck drivers can be fickle. They're spending a lot of time and money getting from point A to B. If this system fails them even one time, they're going to be jaded and they're probably not going to use it again. So we really need to work with state DOTs to get the accuracy of these systems probably close to 99% to make sure that the truck drivers don't have a negative experience. Because when they do, they're going to talk with other truck drivers about it. There's probably a half a dozen common tools that are used. My favorite, although it's on the more costly side, are cameras that count the spaces. You can see automatically if there's a truck in this, you count pixels. Are the pixels full? Are the pixels empty? And then you send that information upstream, downstream to the truck driver using changeable message signs, even apps. That's the best system, but other systems sort of count trucks in and out of a facility, and you don't really know if they're filling a truck parking space or if they're just on the frontage road. And that system slowly but surely becomes out of whack. and inaccurate, and you have to sort of start it over every single day, but they're cheaper. So, and then lastly, truck drivers need to know how many spaces are available. Telling them it's, color-coded red no spaces, and then you get into orange and yellow and green. Who knows what that means? So I'm an advocate as the truck drivers of count the spaces and then tell them in real time how many are available ahead, and give me several exits or facilities worth of information. So I'm not even going to stop at the next one if there's only 2 spaces available, because there might be 10 trucks in front of me. If there's 20 out of 40 spaces available, that's pretty good, and I'm going to take my chances.
While the report talks about best practices for states to expand public truck parking, Dan says there are ways for the trucking industry to use this new research to advocate for themselves.
When the truck drivers become the squeaky wheels and provide these state DOTs and even cities, remember the city of Minneapolis, city of St. Paul banned truck parking if you're not in an active pickup and delivery. So when the truck drivers are the squeaky wheels providing these strategies and solutions for helping the truck drivers find truck parking, advocate for more truck parking at existing rest stops, advocate for more truck parking at non-rest areas. Government has a lot of public land on the interstate system, or I should say just off the interstate system. The truck drivers are going to be our best voice for pushing this information. ATRI has a huge contact database, 40,000 contacts, but we're the researchers. We're not the guys and the gals sitting behind the wheel, suffering, being forced into fatigue situations, being forced out of locations because maybe there's only a 4 or 6 hour limit. We really need the truck drivers and the motor carriers to take this research and distribute it far and wide to the decision makers, who we then hope will act on it.
That's it for this week's 1044. You can read more on ccjdigital.com. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter and stay up to date on the latest in trucking industry news and trends. If you have any questions or feedback, please let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you can catch us again next week.